As you've probably heard by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code The Athletic, and you'll get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic, plus up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code The Athletic. Make your first deposit of at least $10. Place your first bet on any game and claim your voucher for a 1-year subscription to The Athletic. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., Mississippi, New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code The Athletic, and you'll get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic, plus up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager.
There are people out there all across the country pushing boundaries to grow the game of golf. Like champion speed golfer Lauren Cupp, who plays faster than anyone else. And Will Lowry, whose work in the golf community inspires more kids to get into the game. As a champion partner of the Masters, Bank of America supports everyone determined to find out what's possible in golf and in life. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America. Bank of America N.A. member FDIC, copyright 2025, Bank of America Corporation, all rights reserved.
It's time for basketball, and Uber Eats is dropping deals on game day favorites to keep you locked in on the action. Like when you're craving a buzzer beater, but also buffalo wings. Or when an upset makes you want to ugly cry into a pizza. And right now, Uber Eats has game day deals from Burger King, Buffalo Wild Wings, KFC, and hundreds more local favorites. So you can keep your eyes on the ball and your hands on a burger. Order now, only on Uber Eats. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
The Athletic.
Hello and welcome to the Race IndyCar Podcast. We're back. We've got some cracking interviews lined up for you on today's show. We've got Felix Rosenqvist to give us a behind-the-scenes look at Meyer Shank and its new relationship with Chip Ganassi for this year, which is super interesting given that Ganassi has won the first 2 races and Meyer Shank's been with Andretti for quite a while now. So a big switch behind the scenes there, and also Felix has had a really strong start to the season with a 5th and a 7th. So we're definitely looking forward to hearing from him. And we've also got Jack Harvey, who's going to talk a little bit about his new role as a pit lane reporter for Fox. A bit of a interesting switch for him, going from a full-time IndyCar driver to someone working in the pit lane, but he's also super keen to get back into full-time IndyCar action, and he's going to talk a little bit about driving for Dreyer and Reinbold in this year's Indy 500 as well. I'm always super interested to talk to drivers about when they step back and being able to just focus on one event rather than being in the grind of a full IndyCar season, which Jack and I will talk about shortly. Before we do that, I just want to remind you that you can join us on Patreon. If you sign up over there, you can listen to all of the races podcasts ad-free, and you get loads of extra content as well, whether it be written or we have extra podcasts over there as well, all over our network. Obviously, lots of different podcasts at the race that you can go and listen to. And yeah, you can do it ad-free with our Patreon. There's quite often member sign-up offers as well, so make sure you head over there and check out what the latest offer is and join us over there. We've not done an episode after the Thermal race recently, so I also want to get into a few details and a few little bits that happened there and talk a little bit about those. But before we do that, we're going to head over and we're going to hear from Felix Rosenqvist of Meyer Shank Racing. Felix Rosenqvist, welcome back to the Race IndyCar Podcast. Nice to have you. It's been an interesting start to the season, I think, for everyone in IndyCar. Give us a bit of a flavour about how you kind of feel the start's gone for you.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been good. Pretty smooth start to the year, which is nice. I think that's kind of the way we wanted to start it. If we could pick, no craziness, just kind of 2 really solid races where I think honestly in both of them we probably could have done more. But yeah, good finishes. Starting 3rd, finished 7th in St. Pete, and starting ninth, finished fifth in thermal. So we'll take that, sitting fifth in the standings after 2 races, and just kind of settle into the year a bit with a new engineer, like a lot of new people in the stand and stuff. So now I feel like we're actually gelling really well and ready to tackle the busier part of the season.
I guess the big question most people would have for you is how you feel the kind of transition to Ganassi's gone on. I know it's still really, really early in that relationship for you, but I guess, has there been any noticeable difference in terms of how things have worked the first couple of weekends, or has it been quite similar to what it was like at Andretti? You tried to keep the same kind of formula, or how's all that gone?
I think the structure is pretty similar, to be honest. I think both of them have worked really well. I think this partnership, if anything, is a bit deeper than it was before. It's just more communication through both sides, and more meetings, more sort of catching up after the week or between the weekends. I think it's been really good, to be honest. It's always hard when you keep changing people, but I think in this instance it was pretty lucky, because I've worked with most of the Ganassi people from before, at least the engineering side, back in 2019 and 2020. So it's been super smooth for me to just kind of get back to my old team, if you say so. And Ross, my engineer, I didn't know him from before, but he's been great. He's been a super good guy to have on the stand, and he's pretty well rounded as well. So I feel like we honestly couldn't ask for a better guy to have as sort of in the middle of all this. And the team itself, Meyer Shank Racing, is just, I think, on a really upwards trajectory, both on the IMSA side and the IndyCar side. It's just a lot going on in the team since I joined, and pretty cool to be part of it. And also did Daytona a few months back, which was pretty cool.
I feel like every year it feels less like there's a road course package, a street course package, and some sort of oval package, because they just keep getting broken up into smaller and smaller, kind of like, now you have to have a specific car for every track rather than just having like a road course car that's good, and all of this kind of stuff. I know last season you qualified well to start the year, and you've done that again this year. So that's kind of, to me, that looks like a continuation of, what you were able to do last year. What's the kind of feeling for the rest of the season? I know the big focus for you is probably execution and just working on, not having problems, good pit stops, and just kind of executing the race in the way that you need to. I guess, how much have you learned over the first couple of races? Because in many ways it looks like a similar start to last year, maybe a little bit better than last year, but a similar kind of start. So what can you tell from what you've had already that, for the rest of the season, and what that might mean for you?
No, I think you're pretty straight to the point there with qualifying has continued. I think there was probably more in thermal, but we feel like we're good on one lap still, and nothing's changed there. Big focus has been race pace, strategy, tire management, fuel saving, all those things has been like 90% of everything I'm trying to focus in the weekend. And I've been trying to utilize Ross a lot in that, my new engineer. Obviously, he worked with Dixon the last couple of years, and I think he's a smart guy when it comes to just overall kind of perspective, what you need in a weekend in an IndyCar race, and I think the trend has always been there for me to qualify well, bounce back a little, go backwards a little bit in the races, and I feel honestly this year, like, we never felt so strong in the races. The pace is there when you need to like bang out a flyer in the pit sequence. And I've been working very hard personally just to kind of understand the strategy side more, because I feel like, end of the day, it's a team's call when you need to pit and all this, and they have a better understanding of what's going on. But I think the greats in the championship, like the Dixons of the world, they can read a race from the car, and that's something I want to work. I don't say I'm there yet, but I feel like I have a better idea what's happening, and just ability to read the race, which is very important. And I think Ross has taught me some good stuff with like when you need to push and when you shouldn't push, and all this, and it's exciting. I feel like it's already paying dividends, and we could see that in thermal, which was pretty, that was totally a race from that, in that kind of how do you say, a category where you need to be clever, smart, save your tires, and attack at the right moments. And it was cool to, I would say it was a typical race where normally I wouldn't thrive, but actually I did. So it's super exciting.
I guess you've worked with all of the Ganassi guys before in some way, shape or form, somewhere. What's it been like getting back to kind of working a little bit more with them on the, I know you're in the engineering meetings and that sort of stuff, and you're able to see, more of their data. And I guess, even just Alex, from a certain extent, has developed since you last kind of worked with him properly, I guess. And, I don't mean developed in a sense that he wasn't good before, but he's obviously got better and won more championships. So he's gaining more experience as well. And so have you. So I guess how's that all kind of playing out, that whole relationship?
Yeah, it's. I feel like the core there is very similar, where they kept the group very, the same, which has always been their strength. I think as a team, they have, Julian Robertson and Chris Simmons and, Barry Wanser and all these guys that have been there for like 20 plus years. So the fundamentals are the same, but you can tell that they've stepped up in a lot of areas where, like when I went to McLaren, I thought that they did. Like when it came to like the software and technical side, they were ahead of Ganassi. And now when I'm coming back to Ganassi, I feel like they're actually ahead of where McLaren was when I left that team. And it everything just keeps developing. And same goes to like Dixon. I used to work with him really closely. We were 2-car team my first year, and then Marcus came along the second year, and it's pretty cool to see him as well, just like how much he's changed, even if he was already sort of on the, I wouldn't say end of his career, but he, already won, I guess, 5 titles when I was there. And yeah, he just keeps changing and developing. And that's cool to see. I think that's one of the things a driver like me, when I see that, it just shows you that, hey, you need to like, you can't just like cruise your way through this. You got to keep changing and working and get faster, and you just get smarter every day. So I think that's truly what the relationship has brought to me, mostly like the most benefit, just seeing that. And it's pretty cool when you come back and it feels like not that long ago, but everything is just different.
I know last season was, in terms of a teammate side, was a bit out of your control, and you had different people in the car next to you over the course of last season, and not really anyone's fault. It's just how the kind of season played out and what happened. But for you, you're obviously starting the season with Marcus, and I know you probably went into last season thinking that Tom was going to be in the car for the whole season, and that doesn't really change kind of how you approach the season. But Marcus is a strong, experienced IndyCar driver, and he's not coming in as a rookie. So I guess how's your relationship with him been to start the year, and what have you kind of seen from him?
It's been really good. I think we get along. He's a Kiwi, I'm a Swede. I feel like we're both pretty chill, calm people. So we really get along in that sense. No hotheads in the team, I'd say. And he's funny as well. He's a good time, which also always makes it easier to, you can go to dinners and media events or whatever, and it's always a good time with him. But he's very focused, very, he takes his racing really seriously. He might have been one of the guys that I've been with that actually like works the hardest, I say. He's very, in sync with his engineer, Angela. They work very closely together, and yeah, you can tell he really wants it. And I think he's improved a lot since he came every year. He's one of those guys who just like, after the off season, he just comes back stronger every year. So no, we're pushing each other for sure. He beat me in qualifying in Thermal, and I beat him in the race. I feel like we're really pushing each other like session to session, and talking about things and learning things, and work well together. So I think it was a good fit. But yeah, I think overall the team is in a really good harmony right now with me and Marcus, and also our engineers and everything that comes with it. So yeah, good spot to be for starting the season.
I feel like from the outside, you and Marcus feel really similar in the sense that when you're kind of interviewed on TV or in things like this, you're it's really cool that you guys take the question so seriously and you really think about your answers and you put a lot of effort into doing that. I don't think that's the same for every driver. But then when you're away from the kind of media side of things, you do have a lot of fun, and maybe that doesn't come across as much as many people don't get to see that side of you guys as much as maybe they see of other people. But it's really cool that you have that balance between, taking things so seriously and really caring about what you're doing and also caring about the media and thinking about how you respond and giving the fans as much information as you possibly can. But then sometimes that comes across maybe as like you don't always appear as the most fun people in the paddock because you're taking things really, really seriously. It's you're quite similar in that sense, and I hadn't thought about it before.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a difference, right? Who you truly are as a person and what you say in the media. And I think some people have you take like Pato, I guess he's just kind of Pato all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think I'm more like reserved in the way I'm probably like different with my closest friends than I am in an interview, which, is for good and for bad. But yeah, it's definitely interesting when you I know pretty much all the drivers on the grid and many of them outside of IndyCar as well, and it doesn't always add up the off and on camera for sure.
I guess looking at the rest of the season now, I don't want to speak for you. I'm assuming that you're quite happy with the street course performance at St. Pete, and going off prior experience in the past, you've been very strong on street circuit, so I imagine that's something you're quite confident about. And the road course in the most part has been good as well. I think it's probably easy for some people to say that maybe the overall results haven't been as strong for you guys, but I think also maybe if you read into that a bit more, you've had quite a bit go wrong in some of those oval races where you can't just say their oval package isn't good because they've had lots of different stuff going on. But I guess if you were looking at the start of the season and you were targeting somewhere to improve, I imagine ovals would be somewhere you've been looking at quite a bit. Is that the case?
Yeah, yes and no, to be honest. I'd say last year we were the ovals were actually our strongest car, let's say, both on the short and the super speedways. And I think personally as well, I felt the strongest on the ovals. But as you say, it was just a lot of things happening, like Indy 500, engine blow up, Nashville, tire blew up.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of stuff,
one of the second Iowa race, you had something go wrong.
Damper failure.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of DNFs in the ovals, unfortunately, which kind of outside our control. But yeah, obviously we have a different partnership this year, but I'd say we feel pretty good about it. And obviously we don't know until we're there, but yeah, I personally think the ovals is probably the most fun part these days. Where you interviewed me 6 years ago, I would definitely have said that the street courses were the most fun. So it definitely improved a lot in that area. And I think the team as well is in a good spot. I know Ganassi weren't super pleased with their oval performance last year, but I think we can also help them to get back to to a good level and the level we feel happy with, and I think that's what's been cool with this partnership as well, that we've been able to contribute a lot. It's gone both ways, and Meyer Shank, I say, I've been with a lot of good teams, and I think the way they build their cars is better than any other team. They're really, really good, and the attention to detail is next level. The gearbox and uprights and everything. It's those guys know what they're doing, and I think that's why we're always so good at Indy as well. Elio won at Indy 5 years ago, and you can't win at that track if you don't have a really well built car. So be interesting to see. We take the experience from the past years and Elio's win, and now with the Ganassi partnership and also my improved oval skills, I say, just putting that together, I think we'll have pretty good shot this year.
It's probably one of the only downsides of the technical partnerships that the team have had over the past few years, is that they maybe don't get the recognition for their own part in those situations, because I guess you do take parts from another team and you do share their information, but maybe people forget that that goes both ways, in the sense that they get your data as well, and also that there's so many parts of the car and the strategy, the way the team works, that is done by Meyer Shank as well. It's not like you're you just get delivered a car from Ganassi every week, and then you just kind of roll that car out, and it just it just goes.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's still, to 90%, we're still running everything our own.
Yeah.
We have to do our own pit stops and strategy and build the cars, which, no one builds the car the same. Even as much as you like it, even within a team, the cars aren't built the same because there's different mechanics and they like to do stuff differently. So, yeah, I think definitely Shank deserves a lot of cred for how well they do, like how deep they go to make sure these cars are tip top every time you run.
Yeah, their own development work as well. Like you're all doing your own, you're doing your own development work, aren't you, as well? Like it's not like
exactly.
it's not just like Ganassi does everything for you and then you just kind of,
no,
you're not taking part in it.
It's basically you get, the onboards, the compares and the intel, and obviously the setup as well. But as I say, we do our own R&D and, we, go to the dynos and all that kind of stuff that all the teams do. And obviously, I think now with the IMSA partnership, it's like we have so much knowledge in-house, which is pretty cool. We can pretty much make anything in Ohio. So, yeah, I'm pumped for it. I think, as I said, that Indy specifically is something we were a bit bummed about last year. Just, thought we were pretty good. We were the best Honda car in qualifying, and we were running, I think, P6 at the time. We had our little failure going on. So, yeah, pumped to get back.
I feel like you've had a lot of kind of bad luck or things not going your way at the 500. So I'm sure you're super keen to, improve that. And I guess, this is such a great series because it's so diverse and there's so many drivers from different countries, different backgrounds are able to come in and compete. You look at someone like Scott McLaughlin, who's obviously not come through like a normal route to IndyCar, but he's still able to be successful. But I feel like when you go into the 500, there's still like an element of, does he understand the oval or the 500 because he's not from America or he's not come up through the system maybe as strictly as some drivers have. So I guess for you, even like you don't really care about what maybe people are saying on the outside, but you kind of come to the 500 with all of that. There's maybe that doubt from people that you don't have what it takes to win. Whereas I think if you look at your last few 500s, you've been right there at the front and able to compete. So I guess you're quite excited going into this year's event.
Yeah, for sure. As you say, I think the 500 was a tough introduction for me when I came to IndyCar, and it slowly became my favorite race, and I also say my best race, which is, lucky in a way because it's the biggest race of the year. But I feel the last 3 years I've been there, it's just been, we've always been at the front in both qualifying and running in the race as well, which is super cool. And yeah, it's one of those tracks where I feel like every track you come back, it's kind of like a clean sheet. The tires are changed and everything's just kind of different. Like when we came to Thermal this year, for example, it was just a completely different challenge to last year. But when you get back to the 500, it's almost like you just pick up where you left last year and you just get better. At least that's how I feel. So it's, I'm always so excited to like kind of go through the list of stuff you wrote down last year and just pick up and see if you can be even better. And all the best drivers get a bit better every time, and even Elio when he gets back, like he's super impressive there, and he's a great asset to have with us on a third car this weekend or during the 500. But yeah, it's just a special one, and I think that's what makes it so cool.
Well, Felix, thanks for joining us. Good luck for Long Beach. Hope that goes well, and I'm sure you've got one eye on May, so best of luck with all the preparation you're doing there as well.
Thank you very much.
Many think of beauty and health as disconnected, but beauty and wellness are really two sides of the same coin. Hello, I'm Isabella Rossellini, and in the final episode of This Is Not a Beauty podcast, we'll hear from a cancer survivor, an anthropologist, and a carer of the elderly about the relationship between beauty and health. Listen now on your favorite podcast platform.
You're the perfect blend of elegance and style, and your ride should be no different. The 2024 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid meets all your needs, from business to brunch and everywhere in between. With head-turning details like a sleek front end, plus stylish interior, and an available 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster and seamless tech integration. Okay, Hyundai. Visit HyundaiUSA.com to learn more about the new 2024 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid.
Switch to Verizon Business and get more from your internet without paying more for your internet. Get LTE Business Internet starting at $39 a month when paired with a Business Unlimited smartphone plan. That's unlimited data, and with it, unlimited possibilities. Start saving today with Verizon Business, ranked #1 in small business internet customer satisfaction by J.D. Power. Starting price for 25 megabits per second internet plan with savings, plus taxes, fees, and economic adjustment charge. Terms apply. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Great to have Felix back on the show. He's such an interesting character and someone who, as we discussed, is, you know, behind the scenes a really fun and interesting character, and also on camera he is too, and it's really hard to get that kind of balance across. I hope Felix wasn't offended by me asking that question, but it's just that he's so kind of laser focused on things when you hear from him normally in a race weekend that I often think that his personality doesn't come across. So it's great to get him away from the track and do a little bit of that talk. I was also super interested to hear about his take on moving away from McLaren when he thought they were, basically when he left Ganassi, he felt like McLaren was ahead in terms of the software stakes. And then by the time that he'd left McLaren and now being involved with Ganassi, he thinks they're ahead of where McLaren were when he left. So super interesting to get a little bit of that insight, some of those hidden playgrounds that you don't really hear about in IndyCar software and AI and stuff like that, all happening behind the scenes. None of the teams want to talk about it because it's obviously really important to their, you know, where they end up in the order. And I think it's great when you get any sort of hint about any of that stuff from the drivers and teams. Felix giving us a little bit of insight there. Hope you really enjoyed that. He obviously had a really strong weekend in Thermal, as we briefly discussed there at the start of the interview. It was a really interesting weekend. Obviously, Alex Palou kept a fresh set of soft tyres for the end of the race, and that was the decisive difference in him being able to overtake Pato, award the pole sitter late on. Pato obviously upset to finish second, but did a fantastic job. Basically did all he could have done, and in the kind of post-race comments said that the only way he would have been able to fight Alex Palou at all would be to have a set of fresh softs at the end of the race. So all strategy there. Really, you know, you quite often come into these race weekends and the teams say that they don't know what their favourite tyre is, and they actually do know, or they have a very good idea. I think this weekend at Thermal was one of those instances where the teams definitely didn't know what was going to be their favourite tyre, and even some drivers favouring different tyres across the same team. So it was a really interesting lead up in that sense, and trying to pick the strategy was difficult. It was no surprise that Alex Palou's team picked the correct strategy. As we know, he's always very good at that in IndyCar, and his number 10 team, Barry Wanzer, leading the strategy over there, always very, very strong. Pato, going back to him, also had a hybrid issue, which was quite a common theme through the weekend. We saw some wiring issues in the lead up to the race, quite a few teams having to swap out the hybrid unit. Alex Rossi had to switch out too, which made his end result all the more impressive over the course of the weekend. But yeah, lots of hybrid issues in different ways. The wiring one, and also there was issues with just the heat and teams sort of blocking the radiators using blockers to help with aero and stuff like that, but causing an issue for the hybrid as well. So I'm sure IndyCar's going to look into that and make some changes to what the teams are allowed to do there to try and protect those units. It's also worth noting that we've got a new sort of smaller radiator that are used to cool the ERS units. So some teams running blockers on those as well, apparently, which force those hybrid systems into like a kind of safe mode. So lots going on there, lots for IndyCar to look at. I think some really high temperatures and unusual conditions, giving them plenty to look at with this system. I'm sure they'll be looking at that closely before Long Beach. It's also worth mentioning Christian Lundgaard, who was right up there fighting for the victory. Never really kind of looked like he was going to have enough to beat Pato or kind of usurp him, but I think Alex Palou, it was quite close with him through the race until that final stint where Palou had that fresh set of softs that we discussed earlier. So Lundgaard taking a podium and had a great start to his McLaren career. We spoke to Felix Rosenqvist, and we know Alexander Rossi and Oliver Askew and some really strong drivers going into that team and struggling to match Pato in that car. But Christian's really come to the fore since moving over from Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. So that's been super interesting to see. Behind Lundgaard, some really interesting results in the top 10. We had Colton Herta in 4th, and he had a post-race penalty where his team was docked 10 points, not him in terms of the Drivers' Championship, just his team, for a suspension-related item in the kind of post-race scrutineering. So that was an unusual penalty that Andretti said it didn't agree with, but accepted. So that was an interesting one. Just behind Colton, we had Felix, our guest on the show, who's finished 5th after his 7th at St. Pete. We also had Will Power carving through from outside of the top 20 to finish 6th. Marcus Armstrong in 7th, Felix Rosenqvist teammate, who you'll be able to read about on the-race.com if you want to read a feature about the drivers that switched teams in the off-season. We did a feature there. You can go and read that one after St. Pete. But yeah, he had an issue where he hit the wall in St. Pete and was out of the race after he felt he had one of the best race cars he'd ever have in his IndyCar career. So he was really sore about that incident he had there. Then we had Kyle Kirkwood, Alexander Rossi and Scott Dixon rounding out the top 10. We also had Louis Foster with a really impressive 10th place in qualifying as a rookie, only his second event. He tested at Thermal before but hadn't raced there obviously, so a big qualifying result for him and really interesting to see him come into the fore in qualifying. Unfortunately, in the race, he had a problem with his shoulder and the way the car was set up. Because he was taken out on the first lap at St. Pete, he didn't get a full race distance in there. So they've obviously found some things in the cockpit that weren't ideal, but didn't really become obvious until Louis was doing a full race distance. So that was another interesting race for Louis Foster, but lots of signs of strong pace there, so that was impressive. We are going to go over to Jack Harvey shortly and hear from him. Just before we do, I just wanted to briefly address the kind of noise that's come out of Thermal after the kind of TV ratings really highlighted, I guess, a bit of an issue. And there's not really any way to sugarcoat it. The TV numbers went from 1.417 million at St. Pete to 700,000, just over 700,000 at Thermal. Obviously, it was a really difficult weekend for IndyCar because it was clashing with NASCAR and basketball. I think some people have played that down a little bit, but for me, I think that's a really big issue because I don't know if, a lot of people have criticised Thermal and what it's like as a track, a venue. I think the way I look at it is, if the TV number was so high for St. Pete, 1.417 million, as I mentioned, I think a bit of that has to go down to the advertising that Fox did prior to the season, and a lot of that being new fans. I imagine that would be my take, that number's been boosted by a significant number of people who've seen the many Super Bowl adverts and stuff like that were put out before the season and have tuned in. So those people wouldn't have known what Thermal was going to be like as a product or a track. So I don't know if it's, if you can blame the massive drop on Thermal being a poor track or a poor product. Of course, people could have tuned in and then turned it off if they thought it was really poor. But I genuinely didn't think the race was as bad as some people have said it is. And I saw Graham Rahal was in conversation with Nathan Brown on X about the items of the race that he found interesting. A lot of overtaking, different strategies, tyres, a bit of uncertainty around that, and just creating an interesting spectacle. Obviously, Thermal, some people would say, looks like a test track, and there are elements of it that don't look particularly visually pleasing, I guess. But I just don't know that the whole package is that bad that it's, that is the only reason to blame for losing that many people. I think the basketball clash with college basketball and NASCAR being on at the same time has to be the majority reason for me that the number was quite a bit lower. Obviously, that doesn't bode well for the future for similar clashes. So it's something we need to keep a close eye on. But I think in the same way that we've tried not to, after St. Pete, I think a lot of people were realistic and didn't want to get too excited about the TV number. And now it's gone so far the other way that I think I'm sticking to my pre-season kind of justification that we need to wait a few races to let Fox get settled in with all of this. They're still having issues. We had the really embarrassing outage over the course of the Thermal race, which I imagine a lot of people turned off then with that issue, especially if you didn't know much about IndyCar and you kind of tune in for the first time or the second time after St. Pete and you see all of these problems and a kind of, let's be honest, a kind of poorly put together product, I would argue, in terms of how that all looked and obviously the problems that they had as well. So it's a very difficult thing to judge. I think they need more time to get this right, and it's a shame that we had all of this kind of high profile advertising campaigns and stuff before the season, which of course they had to do to show their new purchase. But I think they could have done with a few races of, getting all of this sorted, getting some of these teething issues sorted and presenting a better product to the new fans that came along to have a better chance of keeping them engaged in the programme. So yeah, there's plenty you can read out there. There's a lot of opinions about this. Mine is that we still need to give Fox a little bit more time. It's just been 2 races. My biggest feeling from the TV number is that the clash was the most painful part, but I do think Thermal does have a part to play. I'm definitely not saying it doesn't, but I'm not sure if it can be totally blamed for this TV number personally. I'll be very surprised if we go back there after the reaction that we've seen. I know there was some meetings going on after the race, talks between IndyCar and those at Thermal to try and hash out what the plan for the future was. I guess it's possible that it returns. My current feeling is that, it wouldn't be a great thing for IndyCar, but who knows? It's also a very new track to IndyCar for Thermal. There's a lot they can do to improve things themselves, and maybe they'll be given the opportunity to do that, and I guess that would be fair. So we've taken a quick trip through Thermal. Let's head over and speak to Jack Harvey, who's there on the ground in his new role as a pit lane reporter, but he also will obviously talk about preparing for the Indy 500, and he wants everyone to remember that he's still a racing driver, which is more than fair enough. So let's head over to Jack Harvey. All right, I've got a very, very interesting guest coming on the podcast now. I've got Jack Harvey, who's, I know you're a Star Wars fan, a little bit of coming over to the dark side on the media side of things at the start of this year, doing some pit lane reporting. Jack, thanks for joining us. I'm interested to know how you've kind of found it so far. It must be a weird transition for you, at least for the first part of the year, while you still kind of got the Indy 500 in the back of your mind and kind of thinking about that, but also throwing yourself into this new challenge.
Yeah, I think it became kind of obvious, I think not early in the season, but, towards the end of the season last year that, getting a full-time drive was going to be difficult. We don't have access to that level of funding, but also, not easy to manufacture that seat. So I remember just talking to my parents, my management team, and just said, look, I think we've got enough money to try and do a really solid Indy 500 effort. So that was what our entire year kind of revolved around. So when the season finished, I was still in some conversations with Dale, but I really was pushing hard to try and land the Dreyer seat, which obviously we were able to, which was fantastic. And without the support of Invest, that wouldn't have happened. But also then remembering that, if you look at it, people used to say like the month of May, and yes, May is a very busy month of IndyCar racing, but if you're just doing the 500, you get 2 test days in April, and then it kind of takes up 2 weeks in May. So I'm like, well, I really need to be busy for like more than 2 weeks because I think, I do better with a schedule. I like knowing, I can wake up every day and kind of work towards a goal. And, at Nashville last year, I got the email address of a couple of people from Fox. I sent them emails and just said, hey, like, congratulations on the new deal. I would be interested in being involved. Because at that point, I knew that there wasn't going to be, I didn't require any funding. I knew I was going to have the time to do it. So kind of, why not? And although some other racing opportunities have popped up, we still focused on trying to secure the Dreyer seat, so we turned down some other things. So at Nashville, I met with Pam Miller, basically just told her why I thought I would be good at this, that there was obviously a lot to learn. I was happy to, pay my dues. My long-term goal is to be in the booth, and actually be one of the commentators of the race. However, registering that it is a completely new industry and a new challenge, I think we all agreed that starting in pit lane and learning was a really good path. And that deal actually came together like really late. It was, for anyone who's listening in America, they actually offered me the job on President's Day, which was not the Monday of St. Pete, but the week before. So then you're like, oh, okay, well, this is happening, but it's happening super late. And I would say on the whole, I have really enjoyed it. It's just been so many new things. The only I say that one of the things that I kind of took a lot of comfort in and confidence in was just my IndyCar knowledge. We can discuss the ability to extract lap time out of a car, and why some people can do it, and why there's probably been times where I felt like I was able to do it, but then at other times struggled to do it. But generally, I understand what's happening at an IndyCar weekend. As soon as I see um, the tire selection for the race, I can almost go like, well, they're on this strategy, or at least this is why they're doing that. This is what the ramifications could be. So I do feel like I'm a good addition to the Fox broadcasting team. It's just so new, man. Like the whole thing is like so new, and the first time where I even had like my radio set on, like clipped up and live, where I could hear people communicating on the radio and whatnot, was literally like 2 minutes before practice one at St. Pete. So I did a podcast with Hinch a couple of weeks ago, and I was explaining it to him, and he gets it because he was literally living that weekend with me. But I don't think people realize like how late it came together, how like there was no preparation for it. The preparation was basically, luckily the stats guy, Russ, sent me a whole, massive long document, and I just went through it, making notes at home and, kind of streamlining those notes and whatnot. And it has been awesome. I have to say, I really have enjoyed it. Now, the only one thing that does irk me a little bit is people like, oh, have you enjoyed it? And I'm like, oh yeah, I've definitely enjoyed it. And then they turn around and say, oh, you don't miss driving. I'm like, well, that wasn't the question. The question was, do you enjoy this? Of which I do. If I could drive full time, then, that's always going to be my preference and my goal. I've spent my entire life, trying to be a driver. That being said, I think this is a pretty fantastic opportunity as well. And if I wasn't doing it, I'd literally just be sitting at home still watching. So I feel really fortunate that Fox offered me it in the end, and that we were able to put it together.
It's a really cool environment that you're in now, and I guess you get to see things maybe a little bit more from what I feel like in my job. You kind of, I've seen it a few times where the camera's kind of stuck on you a little bit after you've spoken to someone, and you're kind of shaking hands with the driver and smiling and having a little chat kind of off the air. But you've got this, you have to balance this relationship that you have now with, obviously, all the drivers, you've raced against them for a long time now, and probably good friends with a lot of them, and at least, civil and chatting to the other ones that maybe you don't speak to so much. But you have to kind of manage those relationships. And they now wonder how much they should tell you about different things, because they don't know whether they're telling Jack Harvey, the IndyCar driver, Jack Harvey, the friend, or Jack Harvey, the pit lane reporter. So you're kind of balancing all that now as well.
Probably. Everyone's been really gracious so far. I think because I do generally get along with most people in pit lane, I would actually say more people tell me things now than ever before across like all the teams and whatnot. And I was like, look, guys, I'm doing the 500, so I'm not going to ask you anything about that. There's no ovals before Indy, which is probably a good thing, but it has been a little interesting, more so with the people that I know, but I don't have like a lot of contact with. That's probably been the biggest shift, because, like as an example, Christian Lundgaard's a great pal of mine. We've been teammates for a couple of years. We've been friends the entire time and getting closer, not further apart, which is really nice. And I said to him the other day, I was like, look, if I'm doing a grid walk, and if I start here, I'm ending with you, and I'm going to talk to you about pickleball. And I think he thought I was joking. And that was like the only thing I wanted to talk to him about, really, because
I saw that. He didn't really know what to say to you, did he? He didn't know how to reply.
No. And I said, text him after. I was like, you goober, like, you literally knew that's what I
told you I was going to ask you about this.
And I think that, so many of the drivers have got fun personalities, and, I get to see their personality when they're away from cameras, race team, race tracks, or anything like that. And not that no one's particularly different, but it is nice to see them for who they are, not as a driver. And I think really that's storytelling, I would say, is a fundamental part of what the Fox and broadcast team is trying to do. One of the worst things about racing in general, you put your helmet on, so then people register your name, your number, your team probably, but they don't always like know the drivers because we're covered all the time. So being able to give people a little bit more insight, which, you know, maybe it makes them a fan of Christian, maybe someone who loves pickleball was watching. And yes, I mean, it was a meant to be a light-hearted kind of joke comment, but it has been fun. I'm trying to think if there's been like, I haven't really got into a scenario yet where someone hasn't shared anything because of it. But I said to all the drivers and still some of them who I haven't really covered yet, like I'm here to elevate the drivers. You know, I'm on the driver's side. I understand the driver's perspective. I'm not here to strike, you know, needless controversy and whatnot. Actually, I'm probably someone who probably pushes hard to avoid it because I know what drivers are under. You know, and sometimes what they don't need is more media just chiming in and, you know, turning the wick up. So I said to them, like, look, if there's something you want me to know, but you don't want me to share, just tell me. And I won't. And that's happened like several times already. And at the end of the broadcast, when people have watched it back and whatnot, they're like, oh, we appreciate you not saying that. I'm like, well, you told me not to. Like, and it's not, you know, like for me, I'm not, you know, I'm not lobbying for more airtime. I'm not lobbying to be the most controversial person. Like, I want to contribute something insightful for the current fans and then hopefully help new fans understand what's going on. That's probably where I see myself being positioned. It's not about, you know, for Will as the play-by-play guy, he has to like be always active. I think what I'm contributing right now is a bit more, you know, smaller pockets of information, but maybe from the driver's side, a way to explain it a bit better.
I guess I wanted to talk to you about the 500 as well, and it always sticks with me actually. I'm kind of interested in the whole when people do the 500 or when they do a shorter schedule than they've done previously. And I always remember Marco Andretti talking about this in a lot of detail, and I was really interested by it, and him kind of, I guess it's difficult from the outside to really understand, but you're going from a position of you're in the grind of being in a full-time race seat where every single day you're focusing on the next race, then it's the next race, then it's the next race. You're kind of like in a war in a sense, just going through that year in that way. But then when you step back, you've got the opportunity. Of course, you'd rather be racing full time, like no one's debating that. But the opportunity you've got at the 500 is to take a step back and say, you know, is my preparation right? Am I doing the right things to be ready for the 500? Have I done everything that's possible in my power, in my control, to be perfectly ready for the biggest race of the season, which I think a lot of drivers just don't get to do when they're in the kind of full-time grind. Is that something you found while you've been getting ready this year?
You know, I have. I think doing it with Dreyer, a team that kind of only does the 500 too, they've probably got more experience of going through this than what I have. So there's been moments where I kind of lean on them and I'm like, guys, like I'm bored. Like, what can I do to help? And at some points, they're like, honestly, like, at least today, nothing. But in 2 weeks from now, when we start doing this, this, and this, here's where you can help. And I'm like, okay. So then I think having a team that's used to it, you know, really has probably given me confidence. And, you know, we've already built a, you know, really nice relationship. It's very transparent. It's very honest. It's very open. And I'm like, guys, don't sugarcoat it with me. Like, I don't need it. Just tell me what you want, when you need it, and like I'll be there. You know, I live in Indy, you know, full time, well, because I like being here in general, but also so that when they say, hey, can we do pit stop practice? I'm like, yep, like just tell me when. So I think that's been really interesting. In some ways, I would say it's not having to focus on all the other races means that we go into May just absolutely buzzing, you know, like, and you'll see, you know, a lot of different types of feelings in May. Everyone will be happy that it's May. It's the biggest race. Like, it's not difficult to psych yourself up for the Indy 500. It's the biggest race. However, some people have gotten off to a good start this season. Some people will be pretty neutral about it, and some people will be not happy. And you carry all those emotions in. I think for us, we'll just be happy and grateful that it's finally our turn to get in the car and go. Now, I've been on the receiving end of some rough months of Mays, where I do think, candidly, perhaps outside of the time when I was with MSR, when they had their Andretti partnership through 2020 and 2021, I mean, I think this is the best shot I've had at May outside of those 2 years. And this will be my 8th 500. So really, purely from my side, I feel like there's been a lot of potential at May. I feel very fortunate to have done so many 500s, but I also haven't really done them in a top seat. And I think when you go and work with Dreyer and you see the effort they put in and the focus they have on it, and it makes you feel good about the month. And I mean, bump day is always a stressful thing. Someone asked me about it yesterday and they said, oh, are you nervous for it? I'm like, I feel like everyone should be nervous for it, because if you go to the 500 expecting some things to happen instead of earning some of these things, I think that's a significant problem and one that I want to avoid. So again, because Drive got so much experience, I think leaning on them just to be like, hey, what about this sequence, that sequence, this sequence, and just kind of, go in there with the experience that I have, but also lean on them because they do this far more regularly as a single effort than what I'm used to.
I guess for anyone who doesn't know Dreyer Reinbold, a team that kind of just does the Indy 500 every year and have talked a lot about trying to do different races, but quite a lot of the time just end up focusing on the 500. And I think the last, what if we had 7th, 10th, 11th and 10th previous results. So a team that, even though it doesn't do the rest of the IndyCar field, as Jack's talking about, the preparation's really good and they're obviously a team that is capable of being in the top 10 at the Indy 500 when there's 33 cars. And as Jack said, there's a lot of bad months of May that drivers have. To be able to go into a team knowing that there's a good chance you'll be in the top 10 is a massive opportunity for a team like that. Let's fast forward a bit, Jack, just quickly. Once the 500's out of the way and that's done, what's going to be the full focus for you? Because you've talked a little bit about maybe in the future wanting to be in the booth. You've talked about how much focus went into this year's 500 and maybe turning down some other opportunities to do this, to give it your full focus. Once this is done, will there be a shift? Is there an end goal after that?
I don't know.
That's an easy
honestly,
answer.
I don't know.
Is full-time IndyCar racing still, would that be the top absolute, dream if you could get back into that? Or is there another series Definitely. Or anything else that you'd want to do?
I love IndyCar racing. I tell everybody that, and if there was an opportunity to do it and do it well, then that would always be my number one goal, my number one focus. I mean, to finish this year, I guess realistically, it would be still focused on my job with Fox because I signed a contract with them, and I want to do that really well to the very best of my ability. Obviously, by the time the IndyCar season finishes, the sports car season hasn't yet. So maybe there's some opportunities to navigate through the sports car world, which I would be pretty interested in. We looked at doing, some of the Daytona and Sebring, and transparently, it costs a lot to do the Indy 500. To secure the seat when people like Rinus VeeKay are still on the market, it wasn't a cheap endeavor. So when I say we really put all the eggs into this basket, it probably was at the expense of other opportunities, even some which, if you could have done both, that would have been pretty fantastic, but that wasn't the reality of our situation. In terms of, casting a net perhaps already to next year and what that could look like, it might just depend on what opportunities there are. I mean, I would say, when I say I don't know, it's not anything other than just casting such a wide net and being open-minded to whatever the future brings. I mean, and if next year was exactly the same as this year, I would consider myself to be a very fortunate person in life and quite lucky. So as I've gotten older, I don't get caught up, quite as much in if I'm not doing this, it's a disappointment, because I just feel that so many people would trade me. I'll give you even a silly example. So at Thermal, I got to interview Alex Palou in Victory Circle. That was actually a little lost on me, how long people wait to get a victory interview. I just did it because that's what they told me to do. So then after the race, I'm getting messages across Twitter, X, and then Instagram, and then just, all the weird and wonderful places of social media. And people are like, oh, that's so cool that you got to do an interview for a race winner so early. And then obviously other people saying that it was too early and that I shouldn't be doing it. And I was like, hey, what, like, kind of what? So I called Pam, like our lead producer, and was like, Pam, can you just like, I'm not trying to be insensitive, I'm not trying to be ignorant. What is happening? Like, why is this such a talking point? And she was like, look, it is pretty cool. She's like, we do a rotation here. Like everyone will get the opportunity to do it. There's not a seniority sort of vibe here. Like basically, if you're on the team, everyone's at this level. And she's like, yes, it is a big thing. And then she's like, but we also love the fact that because this is so new for you, you just get on it. Like you just do it. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I think that's kind of a goofy example, but it's literally a case of, at the end of last year, I did not think that I'd be interviewing Alex Palou. It's probably the closest I've come to a championship, if I'm honest, like getting to stand and talk to him and whatnot. Which actually I did send that text in our Fox group chat, which I think, made a few people laugh. But I would be, as it stands today, I would be open and interested in just about anything. I would love to do more driving. I would look, like if we ended up next year, if someone said, hey, there's no full-time IndyCar opportunities, you could do the 500 again, you could stay with Fox and just keep learning. And perhaps do some extra sports car races. I mean, I probably would sign on for that like right now. Because what I would say is for as much as I miss driving, I think the thing I miss the most is being full-time, but also in an environment that you can succeed in. And for whatever reason, and it's been well documented already. The Rahal time was a struggle, and then Dale had some really good moments, but it wasn't full time and kind of like in and out of the car a little bit, plus a little bit of an injury and whatnot. So I miss the competitiveness of a full time seat. I really, in some regards, like don't totally miss, as you were talking about, like Marco saying you're in that grind and that battle. I don't mind it. I think it's sometimes tough bringing everybody else up to it, but when they're tired, and the mechanics get a rough deal in IndyCar, man. Like that's a lot of traveling for them. It's a lot of work, a lot of days off, but you're also trying to then lift the morale of the team. And that's tough. Like I would love to be able to do it, but it is something when you're trying to get through your emotions, then trying to bring everybody else up is a, pretty challenging thing. And at least for this year, I thought that it was a really great, just reset. Like, don't have to be in every, engineering meeting across the season and all these things. So I hope that the 500 goes fantastic. I always said to Fox, it'd be pretty cool that, they should just give me a microphone and like, let me interview myself if I won it or something. That would be absolutely hilarious. But I hope it goes well. And, maybe this is the kickstart to everything. And if not, then maybe it's the kickstart to a completely different career still involved in motorsport.
Jack, thanks so much for joining us. Wish you all the best for your preparation for the 500. And I'm sure we'll speak to you over the course of May, but thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula's skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
Hear that? It's SpringFest savings calling your name, only at Lowe's. Right now, get a free Select Ego 56-volt battery when you buy a Select Ego trimmer, blower, or mower. Plus, get your choice of any 2 bags of Miracle-Gro organic soil mix for only $16. Shop these can't-miss deals in-store or online today. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 4/2. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Excludes Hawaii.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Oh, thanks to Jack for making some time to come on the show and talk to us and talk about some, I guess, a difficult transition period for him. He wants to be racing full time. It's, you can hear that for yourself, and he's having to take a little step back from that, but he's making the most of it, and that's a really cool thing to see. I'm sure everyone will be wishing him well for the 500, and he's in a good team to have a good chance of doing a good job there. So we'll keep an eye on him through the month of May. Long Beach is the next race up, obviously a really interesting one. It's the 50th anniversary of that race, and also it's been purchased recently by Penske, so there'll be, I imagine, some significant changes coming, at least some tweaks and bids to improve the experience there, although obviously Long Beach is basically the second biggest race on the calendar, and the organising team do a great job there, so it's not necessarily like they needed a big change or anything like that, but I think Penske secures the event for the long term in IndyCar, and it'll be very interesting to see what kind of changes they suggest and bring. I think definitely a interesting race last year with Scott Dixon's crazy strategy win. I don't expect that to happen again, but it's always very possible with Scott Dixon in the field. I think the strategy might be a little bit more normal this year. But with the form Alex Palou's in, even St. Pete won on the street course. Long Beach is different to St. Pete in terms of the car setup, but it's still going to be hard to pick a different winner at this point than Palou. And Ganassi winning there last year with Dixon only helps fuel the fire. Dixon, of course, was the last driver to win the first 3 races of the season back in 2020 on the way to the championship. So Alex Palou will be trying to repeat that feat and do something that he hasn't done yet in his IndyCar career, win the first 3 races of the season. If he does that, I think people will be ready to crown him the IndyCar champion already, although it's a long season ahead, and I'd caution against that. But that's we'll have to see how it plays out, and we're talking in hypotheticals right now before the weekend, but definitely heading in, I think Alex Palou is the favourite. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Race IndyCar Podcast. Really enjoyed having Felix Rosenqvist and Jack Harvey with us. You can contact us, podcasts@the-race.com, with voice notes, questions, suggestions, anything you want. Get in touch, let us know. If there's anyone in the paddock that you want to hear on the podcast, we can get them on. Let us know. Any questions that you have for people or questions you have for us, let us know, and we'll come back to you. That's all for this week's episode of the Race IndyCar Podcast.
The Athletic.